Good evening. Apologies on my tardiness. We had a few things happening all at once. I am Nathan Shanks. I'm the current acting mayor of the town of Gawler, and I'd like to welcome you here tonight, staff members, elected members, and the gallery members. Let's start with the statement of acknowledgement. We would like to acknowledge this land that we meet on today is the traditional lands for the Kaurna people and that we respect their spiritual relationships with their country. We also acknowledge the Kaurna people as the custodians of the Greater Adelaide region and that their cultural heritage beliefs are still as important to the living Kaurna people today. Once again, welcome, and I'll just run through the roll call. We do have no apologies, I don't believe. But we do have leaves of absence, Councillor Helen Hennessy and Councillor Paul Koch, and no attendance. Thank you, members. I'm just going to work through to public open forum. We do have three people that wish to present in public open forum. I've got Gary, Ian, and Adrian. I'll do it in that order because that's the way it's been put in front of me. So, Gary, if you'd like to take the microphone, just press the button to speak and welcome Gary.
Yes, yep, I'm good, thanks. Oh, yeah, I can hear it now, yeah. The reason why I'm addressing you here today is to try and gain your support to reclassify my council rates to residential from the present classification that has had the code changed just recently from residential to commercial by the Valuer General's Department. Um, Last month, you may recall, I sent an email to all the councillors regarding the increase in council rates on my residential property from $4,800 a year to $11,570 a year. And the property is my family home. And even though we run a small home-based business on the property, it has been a B&B since 1993, and it's still a family home. And it is located in a residential street in Gawler. I've appealed the code change classification to the Valuer General's Department, and they stated that they believe my property has the look of a commercial property, and therefore they stand by the decision to classify me as commercial. They said that I could appeal to the council, you guys, and Revenue SA to change the coding on the rates and the emergency services levy as these entities, you guys and Revenue SA, are separate from their department and they make their own decisions. I've also contacted Tony Piccolo and a reply has come back from Nick Champion, who's the Minister for Housing and Urban Development, and he has stated that land use codes are not legislated within the Valuation Act of 1971, and therefore there is no legislative avenue for me to dispute this decision with the Office of the Valuer General. So, in the letter of reply from the Minister Champion, he also states that property owners can object to the land use directly with their local council, which is what I'm doing now, and Revenue SA. I wrote a letter to them, as the decision makers on the land can make their own decisions under their own legislation. It was also stated on the Champion's letter that these authorities maintain their own systems and records for taxing purposes, and there are some cases where their opinion of the land use differs from the Valuer General. I believe there's only two B&Bs in Gawler that the owners live on the premises, which is their family home. One is Eagle Foundry B&B and Churchill News B&B. All the other B&Bs are owned by people who don't live on the premises, so they live elsewhere and just rent the houses out. So what I'm asking from the councillors is, if you can, have a think about it and maybe just move the motion to let me retain my residential status with the Gawler Council, because this is my family home and it is my principal place of residence. So thanks for listening, and if you'd like me to ask answer any questions, I'll be happy to do so.
Thank you so much, Gary. Are you able just to provide a little bit of feedback as CEO, and then I'll take some questions from the floor if there are any? Thank you. Sorry about that. Yes, thank you for raising it with the councillors, Gary. I can report that I'm working with our rates team at the minute to look through. The first option we're looking at is asking whether the Valley General will spin off the residential portion from the accommodation portion. Um, and once that response, that will kind of determine how much I'm going to talk to the elected members and see where we go forward. But I just want to assure you that we are actively trying to work through it for you.
Thanks very much. It's much appreciated.
Was there any further questions, Councillor Isaacson?
Yes. There we are. So, thanks for trying to speak. The question was probably directed to the CEO, just in regard to see emergence of a lot of short-term accommodation, particularly things like Airbnbs, which I know may fall outside of some of the legislative frameworks, but we've got traditional small businesses in the town that don't operate under the auspices of a multinational company who makes quite a big buck off of having the short-term accommodation. But I guess in this example is that Airbnb is usually classified as residential, um, as opposed to something like a small business that Gary Iwanga owns.
I think as Gary's alluded to in the correspondence from the VG, sometimes it depends on the look of the property from the street. If it's a home, they're not aware of anything else. They may classify as residential, but if they've researched Airbnb, it may have got captured. So it's hard to say that the rules applied 100% consistently. We generally rely on individuals like Gary to tell us that there's an anomaly that's come forward. I might note that this year in particular, this change certainly wasn't prompted by council. It was the VG made the observation and decided to change the situation for Gary. I think this is a piece we probably do need to talk a bit more about as a council, particularly with a focus on tourism accommodation and whether council wants to look at a particular differential. It's certainly an option. I don't want to prosecute the case tonight, but it could be a future conversation. Thank you, Chris. I just like to read that. Sorry, thanks, Gary, and back to Chris as well. I recall reading something on stage that a home business particularly doesn't have signage out the front doors going out. So in this case, is that possibly well, that's why we have got signage out. I know where you are, just haven't noticed signage, to tell you the truth. I think that's a fair point. That they would have looked at the signage and said, yep, there's business there. Obviously, we're not the value, but I think, yeah, as Gary has shared, if they take the view that it looks like a business, sign is a bit of giveaway. But as we know, we've got a whole lot of home-based businesses that would operate. There's nothing wrong with that, but they would fly under the radar with the value. I think there are certain times when we have unintended consequences for these things. Yeah. Thank you. Any further questions for Gary or Gaps?
I understand everything that's been said, but that house, the home of Gary, and that sort of thing was a very important, business in this town. You drive around the town wherever you want to see a wrought iron, it all came out of there and all that sort of stuff. But Gary never bought it as a business. And it surprises me when rules are made in this way, when maybe the people don't get off their computer or get out of their car. And, that's a heritage building in our town. And the way it's been done up and preserved as Gary's home is to be credited. So we have to support this. And I think most has been said. I don't think the people that have decided to change that structure fee would have known that.
Through Mr. Mayor, Mayor-elect, not sure what it is tonight. That's a quick comment.
obviously I don't know the inner workings of the VG's thinking, but as I said, sometimes there are unintended consequences. The good thing is we're looking at it and we'll try and work through it in a common sense approach.
Thank you. I think that, long story short, there, I think there's some appetite here in the room to try to find an outcome here, and I think there's probably some more work that council and certainly some local members may do with you offline. But yeah, thank you very much for your presentation tonight. It is much appreciated, and thank you for your business. I know my family has stayed there many a time, so thanks again. Yeah, thank you. I've got Mr. Ian Tooley to speak on boundary reform.
Thank you, Mayor. And can I be the first to congratulate you on winning the election? I think the information is public. AXA has released it. It was a very, very close race between yourself and Cody. You've got over there by about 300 votes, I think, something like that. So congratulations to you. Commiserations to Cody. I think you both ran a stellar campaign, and the results in.
Thank you.
It's been 14 months since I've spoken from the Open Forum, and so I went and revisited the policy on Open Forum, your policy. I have to say what I just experienced is a bit strange, because your policy says that you and the speaker can ask and answer questions, but you can't engage in commentary and debate. Maybe it's a time issue, but that's exactly what you just did then. So that's how I've read your policy. Interesting, 14 months ago, when I came here, I was blocked from speaking. And the reason I was blocked, I was told I cannot speak on a matter that's already resolved. Yet here I am tonight speaking on boundary reform, which is a matter that's already resolved. It's interesting, when I met with you, Chris, and we discussed this. We had two very lengthy meetings, and I discussed the issue of me being blocked. You agreed with me that it's ridiculous. People from the Open Forum can speak on matters already resolved, and we've done this a big percentage of the time. But I want to speak on boundary reform tonight, and I want to ask three questions. Just as a preamble to my questions, the wasteful, failed boundary reform land grab, as I call it, started with Mayor Redman and CEO Annette back in May 2019. Yes, it started with that previous council, but I've heard stuff flying around Facebook that they're the ones to blame, if not you. But I'd like to remind you that you had an opportunity to kill off this boundary reform. Back in May 23, you submitted 7 motions from notice because you were furious at the 6.5% rate hike. And you were successful in having $1.2 million removed from the budget. But none of those 7 motions involved the money that was allocated for boundary reform. So what happened was you were told that that money was used to bring down debt. And so you were furious. And Nathan Shanks moved a motion a month later at the June meeting that you would move $390,000 earmarked for stage 3 below the line. And it passed.
379 and a half, I believe.
Sorry?
379 and a half.
Yeah. Okay. And that motion passed. Then the money was reinstated. You were misled. You were told that once the process started, you could stop. And yet, on the 24th of September 23, you had a big motion come before you, and you had 2 secret letters from the Boundary Commission. I've now read those because they've been released. And you had to pass that motion in order to trigger the next 200,000 for stage 3. And you voted for it 7-1. There's only 8 people there that night. All of you, except Jim Vallelonga, voted in favour of it. Jim Vallelonga voted against it. Councillor Samble and Councillor Shanks were absent. You could have stopped it there and then. So you have as much blood in your hands in this waste of money as the previous councillor did. Now, these are my three questions. Number one, what has been the total cost to ratepayers of this failed boundary reform land grab beginning in May 2019 and running until now? The conservative estimates are that it's between 400 and 600,000 of our money you flushed down the toilet on this folly. But that does not take into account the thousands of staff hours. So that's my first question. Can someone please answer it for me? How much has it cost us as ratepayers for you to pursue boundary reform? That's my first question.
So we're more than happy to take these questions because I think actually putting them back on questions without notice would be a good thing to do if possible for the public tabling to the dollar, unless you know it off the top of your head.
I totally agree with you, Mr. Mayor. I've taken it on notice from the figure, but I need to go and calculate.
And can I ask Chris and the Mayor, through you, Mayor, how will we know? Because I've done this tonight publicly because we as ratepayers need to know how our money is used. How will we know the answer to that question publicly?
So if we actually commit to providing the answer on your question without notice, and we'll get to the other two, break them down and give you the costing give us all the costing breakdown. That's how it is fair and reasonable and transparent because it's a fair question.
Will they be made public then, or you'll print them?
Of course.
On the website?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because we need to know how our rates are spent. And, you know, if 600,000 is wrong, let's kill that off.
Yes.
I know it's hundreds of thousands just to pay to the Boundaries Commission and BDO.
And I agree.
And then there are staff hours as well.
I agree with you, Mr. Tully. There is no reason to play the guessing game. So let's break it down and provide it back publicly.
Thank you. Okay, my second question. Will the town of Gawler now apologise to the Gawler community for yet another massive waste of their rate revenue, possibly up to $600,000? Will the town of Gawler apologise to ratepayers for that waste?
I mean, that's a great question, not one that I can provide an answer to. You have to probably get something from the chamber to be able to direct that. Where I sit personally, I'm going to reform, putting that aside for a second and putting my hat on that I need to in the leadership role. Council hasn't necessarily acted anything outside of their powers to do so through a process that they chose to follow. How it's turned out, we as this elected body are still trying to unpack that. You might have read the agenda for tonight. We do have a motion on the table for tonight where this conversation will be debated and resolutions will be set, and the position of council will go one way or the other. You searching for an apology tonight is not something I can offer you, but naturally, while we still try to unpack the minister's recommendation that is about 2.5 business days old.
The reason I ask, Nathan, is because, as you know, not a single motion was ever unanimous on that. Not one. In some areas, the support of the council declined. There's only the casting vote of the mayor. I myself launched a massive rescind motion. We have the numbers, the Team Red Faction did. At no point was a cost-benefit analysis ever done. At no point did this council ever send it to the audit committee for risk assessment. And yet at one point, this council said, that's climate change policy, that has to go to the audit committee. And yet something as massive as this council was negligent, never sent it to the audit and risk committee, and it was always a huge risk.
So I certainly understand your passion on the matter and understand the history being in the chamber while this was all happening. But just moving on, what's your third question? And then we can provide you answers systematically and professionally on all three of those. And when this chamber talks about this topic, stick around. We'll have a discussion about this particular topic. Thanks to Councillor Solomon and his motion moving forward.
Yeah. Okay. So that is a question that I leave for you guys to decide if you want to answer that.
Thank you. And to the third one.
My third question is, will the town of Gawler apologise to Light Regional Council and to Barossa Council for the hell they've gone through for 8 years? And will the town of Gawler compensate them for the hundreds of thousands they've spent as they had to turn staff hours fending off the attack from Gawler, preparing a massive amount of data for BDO and other consultants as they tried to protect their land? They are out of pocket a huge amount of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they've been put through hell for 8 years. And as we know, BDO said they're not going to support it. We're not going to get through it. We're not going to get Concordia. And then we know that the Boundaries Commission flipped. And then we know, just last week, the Minister said, I'm going to honour BDO and I'm going to say no. So, will you apologise and will you compensate those two councillors? It's a third question.
So again, send them through. We'll work on a professional response, send it to you. I also have it tabled, and I'm confident to say that I have very good working relationships with our neighbouring mayors, something I've been working on for a number of years. Those questions haven't come across my desk from those people yet, so they won't, or we'll address them as they come about. But again, if you can email myself or Chris those questions, we'll provide some professional
Can I just
responses.
clarify there? You said you've taken them on notice. You've got the audio. My questions are exactly as they are. Are you saying I now need to send them through? Or?
No, all good. Audio is what it is. I'm just getting some clarification. All good. We'll take it.
Thank you.
You very much.
Okay. And to conclude, yes, I have read Councillor Solomon's motion, and I do think that would be, he has talked, I've seen his messages on Facebook, he has talked about now doing some amendments to it. I would think that would be a wonderful time to put perhaps those apologies in those amendments, but I'm not holding my breath that Councillor Solomon would do that. And my final point then to wind up is the Minister said, what next? He's told the Boundaries Commission to come back to him and to come up with a better suggestion. I note that on page 24 of the submission that the Boundary Commission put to the Minister, the Boundary Commission has put an alternative. And in that alternative, he suggested that the Minister might like to form, given the gap, given the massive growth in the north, he suggested that the Minister might set his mind to creating an amalgamated super council of the north in the same way that they did with the super council in the south in Onkaparinga. That may well be what comes back. Now, I don't think anyone thought of amalgamation when you as a council started this, but I did these figures today. It costs for Light, Barossa and Gawler to run 3 mayors, 3 deputy mayors, 27 councillors and 3 CEOs annually to pay for them $1,850,000. Let that sink in for those 3 councillors. Onkaparinga has 1 mayor, 1 CEO, 1 deputy mayor, and 12 councillors. And to run that super council costs them $850,000 a year in those. Then you add the massive savings that come with a combined council. You don't need as many executives, as many general staff. You've got the economies of scale. You don't need as much time and equipment. You don't need 3 council chambers. It's a no-brainer. You're saving at least $1 million a year just on the councillors and CEOs, and then the others. Imagine what we can do with the millions saved from that. And you say, yeah, but what about the size? Well, Onkaparinga serves a population of 183,000, I think, 182,000 people. The combined population of Light, Barossa and Gawler is 70,000. 182 versus 70. And they save $1 million a year by being a super council. There are 4 super councils in South Australia. every one of them is a success rate. And you might say, would Gawler lose her identity if we were amalgamated? Well, Nuriota, Angaston, Tanunda, Williamstown, Linddoch, they were combined in 1996. They didn't lose their identity. They thrived.
No, there's certainly a bigger conversation about 68 councils in the state, and I don't disagree with some of the sentiment. I'm just noting we're about 10 minutes into this one.
I'm happy to stop. Thank you.
No worries. Well, thank you very much for your presentation. And we have some questions from the floor. Councillor Isaacson, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Tooley. I just wanted to check on some things there. So I know your history with advocacy on just boundary reform and council amalgamation. I think moving forward, do you think the answer is to amalgamate the three northern councils that include Gawler, and Barossa? Is that an outcome which you think would be beneficial for ratepayers in the area?
I had initially thought that such an amalgamation would have been considered heresy. If I was back on council, I would never entertain that. But as the boundary reform process has gone on, I've attended every single meeting. I've written submissions, I've talked to people, I've read the reports, and I have to say, I don't think Gawler can thrive without an amalgamation. I'm sorry to say, but I think a lot of us feel that this council is incompetent, can't manage the money that we've got, can waste our money. Again, you've heard me bang on $2.3 million on that replacement wall, 600,000 possibly flushed down the toilet. You halted 12th Street because people like Mr. Shafty and others said, we want you to consider Bluestone. And you said, well, okay, we'll stop. We might have to find $590,000 extra for Bluestone. The community thinks, are you joking? We've lost confidence in the way you manage our money. So yes, I think the interests of ratepayers might well be served with amalgamation.
Something interesting, if I may. So thank you for that clarification. So I just want to confirm that you've changed your view on how we should move forward based on the information that was presented during the boundary reform process. Is that correct?
It's a combination of things. You know how you shift your position based on a whole lot of information?
Yes.
But that has played a part. That has played a part in the shifting. And particularly I spent a long time to get that data. When I saw the amalgamation, I went back and had a look. We used to have 168 councils. We revolutionised that. The state government did in the 90s down to 68 councils. A massive, and everyone, Port, Adelaide, Enfield, Onkaparinga, Charles Sturt, all of those amalgamated councils have been a success. I'm thinking now this could be a success for Gawler.
And one final question. I'll use the most media. So, talking about the huge successes of those councils, I just wanted to check. So, you had the figure there for the elected members are paid in three Lightbulbs and Gawler. Just wondering if you had the total figure for the budget of that council and what it would be. And also, do you think that Onkaparinga Council is, in recent years, a good example of sound financial management?
Onkaparinga has had a problem. Its CEO was put before the courts. They had a very loose system where the CEO and others, I believe, might have been the mayor as well, were given credit cards, and they misused those. So there's, I don't think that's an indication that the super council hasn't worked. The council now, I believe, is doing very well. No, I don't have access to the total budget. I'll tell you this. Their total budget and their total staff will be way less than you combine the three. I've only done the surface, electing members, the CEOs, the deputy mayors. You combine those councils, you do not need this number of chambers. You don't need as much plant. It's called economies of scale. And it's been a huge success in South Australia.
Thank you. I'm interested in, thank you for raising it. So I have to go have a look at the level of their debt and what their rates were, because I'm interested now. Thank you for the answers.
Yeah, thank you for the questions. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And again, in the fairness, any other further questions for the presenter, Mr. Tooley? There Being none, Mr. Adrian Shackley, would you be able to take the mic?
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. Seems the way you extend your public open forum time is to ask lots of questions.
Look, it's easier to have a conversation now than later.
Yeah, I want to speak on boundary reform. The previous legislation on boundary reform that was replaced about 8 years ago was hopeless. It relied on essentially agreement between councils to make it happen, and it never happened. There was no significant changes under that legislation, which ran for, 15 years. When I was on council, I told people, don't waste your time thinking about, boundary changes under this legislation. The current legislation has an independent process involving the Boundaries Commission, which is a sort of, fair sort of proposal. That's exactly how things should happen. I have to say, that Gawler's been a test case in this process, so no surprise that the process has been slow and messy. And I think, in retrospect, the council would have been better to have negotiated a bit clearer process with the Boundaries Commission before kicking things off, because nothing's easy in this process. The Boundaries Commission choosing BDO to be their investigator was a disaster. Never put an accountant in charge of a process as complex as this. The meeting that I went to at Hewitt was an absolute fiasco. There was no one facilitating the meeting. BDO had to sort of chose to, explain the process, run the meeting, and try and explain what the potential outcomes were. They're wearing about 3 hats. And they didn't even run the meeting. So the people who shouted and interrupted constantly, got the floor, and the proposal that they BDO put up at the start of it, have sessions about this and that, never happened. That was a complete waste of time, really. I'm not surprised they get the process wrong, and about all they could do in their report is saying, well, a lot of people made comments to us that, they didn't like this process. That would be about 100 or 200 out of, whatever, 50, 70,000 people, and that played right with them. Well, fairly, the job of local government and the Act is to try and work out what's good for local government and what's good for the communities involved. It's not to, debate whether people in Hewitt will pay $100 more or less on their rates. That's so. I don't know quite what's happened in the last few weeks, but I'm really surprised that firstly the minister has leapt in within a couple of weeks, and I would suggest without some proper advice in some cases, and a whole lot of political commentary about where this might or might not go. I mean, there's a whole process to think through about how boundary changes work in terms of timing and process. And the Boundaries Commission, presumably, will play a role in that, as will all the councils who are involved, etc. So, having a sort of a stab at an outcome from the minister about two weeks after the report came out just seemed very surprising. I'd have to say I don't think the minister's had a lot of experience with local government, so that didn't help either. But what's required is some serious discussion and taking time both between the minister and the commission and the councils involved as to how this process should go forward. And I mean, I have to say, Councillor Solomon's proposal doesn't help, because that's attempting to sort of throw out the main part of the council process that has been supported and funded by the council previously, without any of this other discussion taking place. I'm sort of amused by it in some ways. When the minister says that he doesn't think he can deal with the proposal sort of as they put up, well, it's all or nothing. I don't believe that at all. there are whatever there are 7 different proposals that have come from the commission effectively. The minister can say, I agree with this one, I don't agree with that one. It's not one proposal, it's a series of proposals, and the minister would be perfectly able to deal with them one at a time if that's the way or he can accept some and not accept the others if that's what he wishes to do at the end of the day. But I don't think he's had good advice on that, frankly. So, and I just don't think it's been good that this process has been politicised in the way it has. I think that's, I understand people get up and have their opinions about things, but seriously, it doesn't help the process for people to be putting their oar in on a political basis when, the issue is what's the best outcome for local government and the various communities that we're dealing with. And with the suggestion, for example, that local government boundary reform should benefit all the people involved, well, if that were the case, Gawler Council would end at East Terrace. That's where it started in 1857. East Terrace down to the rivers, about 5% of our current council area. Because who would agree to change that? Finally, in 1933, it changed. Gawler South and Williston and Gawler East up to Cheek Avenue became part of Gawler Council. But it wasn't on the basis that everyone was happy with it. Of course, they weren't happy with some of them. And then in 1985, we had another change. So a whole lot more of Gawler East back to Sunnydale Avenue became part of Gawler, a bit more of Williston, the other side of Chamberlain Road. A whole lot of Evanston Park that had been developed in Playford Council on Gawler's boundary became part of Gawler. Again, it wasn't done because everyone was happy with it. It was done because it was a good outcome for the council, all of the councils involved, particularly Gawler Council. So I'm pleading really for the council. I'm surprised that where the council's up to. I think the council needs to take its time and think through and get good advice and find out what the options are as to how all this stuff can be sorted out. Because suggestions about a massive big council, why wouldn't it involve Adelaide Plains, for example? Believe me, the Barossa Council is not about to lose its identity, in the way that's being suggested. And I doubt that people in Gawler would think it was a good idea either. So, you are here representing our Gawler community. You need to think that through seriously as to what this process has been talked about for many years. What happens with Cumberland, what happens with Concordia, what happens with Hewitt. And it would be a very bad outcome to get a rushed decision just to ditch a whole lot of that, given what's happened in the previous processes and the well-known views of the Gawler community. I mean, believe me, people here are seriously supportive of changing boundaries, providing it's a proper process.
So, Andrew, I'm just conscious of time. Are you wrapping up? Yep, happy there. Was there any questions for Mr. Shackley? Councillor Swan?
Is this quite this?
Yeah, absolutely.
I just want to, and this is public, and I have to have this piece of paper in front of me, but so here first, thank you, Mr. Shackley. According to the Minister, he has under the Act, it's my responsibility to determine whether a general proposal proceeds or does not proceed. There is no power for me to directly amend the Commission's report or recommendation. So, and I think the Minister's made that clear. If you think that's different advice, that if you think that's bad advice, so be it. But I guess that being said, what would you propose is the way to deal with that moving forward? The Minister's made a recommendation to reject this particular one, and come back with a suggestion, and come back with some other suggestions. The term, I think you almost use the term throw the baby into the bathwater there in regards to my motion. But is it worthwhile still pursuing, in your view, what's the way forward there? Given the Minister said that he won't accept Concordia Hewitt and Calby North, and as well north of Company. And what is your view on the areas that aren't be worth pursuing them coming to Norway.
So just this button there, Adrian.
Yep.
Well, I think you need to look at the minister's letter. I mean, his reason for dealing with Concordia is relating to the planning processes that are in train, relating to Gawler Council and Barossa Council. Well, for the life of me, I mean, I don't see why, whatever that process is, I mean, the changes in the boundaries, they might take 5 years to implement, for example. I mean, there are ways of dealing with these planning processes that will be acceptable to both Gawler and Barossa, I would have thought. To say that, well, hang on, my view is that this is going to throw a spanner in the works. Well, that's, I would thought that needs a discussion about it. Why would that be the case? And there's no particular time frame for these things to happen. And, Concordia might well go ahead on its current time frame with a different process. But the minister hasn't thought that through, I don't think. And as far as Hewitt's concerned, well, his views seem to be that a lot of people in Hewitt weren't happy with it, so I'm not going to support it. That's not the basis for a decision I would a considered decision, given the sort of processes that are involved in dealing with boundaries. I mean, of course, there's going to be some people not happy, and they're the ones who you're going to hear from.
Just experience, but you've got a follow-up question.
Yes, certainly do. You know me too well, man. I might use my three again. Let's see how we go with this one. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Shankly. Just in regard to the GARP and Cutler, but also you mentioned there the housing roadmap and what the minister's expressed as a reason for keeping Concordia out. I'm just wondering, do you think that the growth in Cutler changes anything? And is there does that change the contribution that would be required by existing Gawler Ratepays to fund two major developments of the triple side of Gawler as compared to double when we started this process and didn't know about Cutler? And secondly, what's your view on how Town of Gawler would compensate Ross for their investment in the planning of the Concordia area?
With the issues about how things change when council boundaries change, I mean, the state's been through that process a lot of times. I mean, there's a fair way of, assessing what the input was for the process and working out a way of paying for that. And it's not sort of money up front. The deals that have been done are over quite a long period of time, same with adjustment of rates. Often that's over a period of years. There's innumerable ways of doing it that would be fair to both councils, I would have thought. On the Cutler issue, yes, there's more work involved, but I mean, collectively, there's only the same amount of work involved regardless of who's running it. It's just a question of how those resources are derived and how the process is directed. There's no more resources required for managing Cutler and Concordia. It's just a question of how the councils work it out. I'd be surprised if there's any significant change in the cost.
I'll leave it. I think
Just
structure is what I was asking. Sorry, yes. Just quickly, just in regard to the motion itself. I mean, you mentioned the inadequacies you see in the process that has been undertaken. I mean, do you think it's reasonable for us as a council to advocate that process be changed, consider it a test case, so moving forward?
Absolutely. I don't have a problem with commenting on the way the Boundaries Commission work. I mean, I think they would probably think it's a good idea to review themselves what's happened. It's obvious. I say it's a big process for them and for the relevant councils involved. It's very important to understand how you can do that better, undoubtedly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any further questions for Mr. Shankly? There be none. Thank you very much for your presentation, Adrian. I've got one last late inclusion, Mr. Peter Ron, if you wanted to come up to the microphone. Thank you.
I'm Peter Baldwin. I'm here in my capacity as president of the Carbeathan Sporting Association, and I've got no notes, so I'm going to wing it. Triggered by the boundaries decision by the minister, I'm concerned how Gawler sporting clubs can not only compete amongst themselves for council revenue and grants from the state government, but also for the Concordia development. I did notice that there are plans afoot to include a sporting hub there as well, which makes that pie even lesser that we have to compete for. Carbeath Reserve, the master plan, as you guys would know, was unravelled. How many years ago, Bryce? 2020? Okay. And we're partway there. Now, originally, that was a four-stage process, and currently, all what's been done so far is part one of stage one. And there's three different parts, apparently, or something like that. So basically, what starts off as a master plan, to my reckoning, gets whittled down, where it becomes a drip feed system, where things are done piecemeal, basically. As far as I know, there's no other further development at Carbeathan, and I do note that just south of Gawler is I forgot the name of the place, but South Gawler relocation with RSL. That's going to be a big whack. We've got Williston, $18 million identified for that. It's a huge whack as well. So our concern is from the Gawler Eagles soccer club point of view especially, is that we are bursting at the seams, yet we are quite pessimistic about the next 10 years. None of us will be there. We'll all move on. I'll be gone probably next year. So we're just concerned at the overall direction of sporting infrastructure, not only within Gawler, but surrounds as well. We've got Anglevale. We're competing with the Playford Council sporting clubs as well. So, I'm just here to start a bit of a whinge. How's that?
Oh, look, that's fine, Peter. Sorry, just before I follow the response, are you able to spell your last name just for me to take it?
Yeah, BROELMAN. And certainly can appreciate the work by council staff. I liaise with the guys Croft and Bryce, and even the groundskeepers. They're pretty cool dudes. So, any questions? Good. No, thank you.
I was just going to provide just a quick high level of where this council, because I don't disagree. You did use the word competing, and I think that's something that this council certainly is cognizant of, and that regional approach, positioning this council along with how it sits in the region. I think that conversation has made the point perfectly. Well, if there's a funding going to Anglevale because they're building their sporting facilities, how are we going to get as far as that pie? And to be honest, our master plans and our strategies, the position as well to be able to go for those opportunities are the answer to that. Now, does that always come to fruition? No, not at all. And is the model foolproof? Personally, in my personal opinion, I don't think it is, because you're setting up a strategy with the hope that you might secure a grant, and if you don't, you've raised an expectation that now you need to simmer off. That's why we're working very collaboratively with our neighbouring councils on those regional outcomes, and that's why you've heard me give a long time to some of the presenters tonight about the boundary reform conversation, because those conversations are very important for this council to have, and neighbouring councils and state government. But absolutely hear you, and you speaking tonight is one of those, I guess, empowering points where us elected members are saying exactly the same thing, our staff are saying the same thing. What are the answers? Well, unless we're trying to...
It's quite frustrating, even from the soccer team point of view. Some of you, or you will know that at Carbeathan there's a big oval. We need lights on that big oval so we can have our junior kids train. I just got a quote to submit for a grant that Bryce told me about with the Department of Rec and Sport. Now, the soccer club was willing to fork out 25%, which is the minimum for co-contribution. So we were kind of budgeting about 50 grand all up. The quote for 2 light towers plus trenching, connecting, and a little switch, $370,000. Now that's just blind us up. So we're stuck. We're too small to do anything, and we're desperate to get stuff done so we can grow and move forward. So yeah, and that also triggered my whinge fest as well. Was just here we go. Oh great, it's quote. Okay. So I won't cry with that particular quote. I'm asking elsewhere now, so hopefully that'll come right under where the sort of club can contribute 50 grand. So that's where the club stands at the moment. And as for baseball and softball, which also shares carpet, they're stone broke. They've got nothing. So we can't even ask them to co-contribute. So yeah, so we're leading the charge, but sadly the charge is falling flat so far.
Do I have any questions for Peter? No. They've been, please don't think that your volunteer work, your representing your club is a whinge at any point in time. This club obviously supports and really appreciates the work you and other presidents do and volunteers in this space. So yes, we don't disagree with the sentiment. We don't have all the answers at this point. We have an appetite to try and find them where we can. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you guys.
Cheers. Okay. All right. Moving forward, are we able just to flick that? Oh, I can do that. There we go. Thank you very much. That concludes public open forum. Moving through our agenda, we've got deputations. I've got no deputations. Did you want to make a personal comment? All right, no worries. I have to seek leave of the meeting for that. Councillor Davies is asked to make a personal statement. Does he have leave of the meeting? I'll get that to raise. You have leave. Thank you, Councillor Davies.
Thank you. I just wanted to acknowledge so as mentioned, the results have come through for the mayoral election, and it was actually very close. It was our new mayor who got 46% of the first preference vote, and I got 44%. And in the end, it was decided by around 300 votes. So I'd like to congratulate the mayor on what I think is probably the best and most positive campaign that there's been for a long time in the mayoral elections, and to congratulate him on the win, and just to say that I will continue to support this council and all the work of the mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Davies, for those words. It was very big of you. I was actually trying to get on with our business, but I appreciate it. Congratulations, and congratulations to you as well on a well laid out campaign. The work you've done deserves a very good nod. It's been history setting with the social media presence alone as well. So thank you very much, and thank you, members. So just moving forward, we've got the adjourned items. We don't have any adjourned items. We don't have any petitions. We're looking for confirmation of minutes for the 26th of August, members. Do I move? You're happy to move that way, Councillor Balamonga. Do I have a second for minutes? You're happy to second, Councillor Davies. Any discussion? There being none, I'll put that. All those in favour, that is carried unanimously. Thank you. Business arising from the minutes is nil. Oh, sorry. You've got something to add there, Councillor Davies.
Sorry, not business arising. I'd just like to move forward the motion on notice to be our first decision report, given there's several people in the gallery here to listen to that discussion.
No, I'm happy to take that. So Councillor Davies has chosen to move item 15.1 ahead of 9.1. And Councillor Sample, you're happy to second that. The discussion was because we have people interested in the item. Any further discussion? If there be none, I'm going to put that motion to move this ahead of 9.1. Put that motion, all those in favour. That is carried unanimously. So we are now on page 120. item 15.1. Councillor Simon, would you like to speak to your motion?
But I've just, as foreshadowed, moving an alternative motion given that between the time that the motion was submitted and the council meeting tonight, the minister made a decision, which was very very timely. So,
Am I able to get the motion that Councillor Solomon would like to move?
I believe that's been circulated to governance.
Oh, that's already there?
That's the one on the screen.
Yep, I've had a look at the screen on the agenda in front of me, of course. Makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah, so if you're happy with the wording,
Yeah, that looks like it's it. Yep, I think that's motion. Fantastic. So, yeah, happy to move the motion. I would just start by saying that I think obviously the minister's made a decision in recent days about this particular subject. It's been something which has continued on for an extended period of time now, almost 6 years. This council has been looking at this specific proposal. As the motion highlights, during that time a lot has changed. We've had a pandemic for one. Costs are very different. The phases like the cost of living crisis and housing crisis weren't even met in our common parlance until very recently, and that's something that didn't exist at the time when this started. We've also had the GARP, which has been very recent, within the last 6 months, so I believe, where we've now got an additional 10 to 12,000 proposed houses going into Cudler. Someone has to fund that infrastructure. That will be whether through taxes or through rates. That will be the people of Gorma who are paying that. Hopefully there's significant government investment there, but there's no doubt that that will cost ratepayers and it will cost this council to develop those 10,000 to 12,000 houses in Cudler. We're looking at an expansion of Gorma and surrounds that is no longer doubling our population with the inclusion of Concordia. We're talking about tripling it. And we need to be very serious and turn our minds to exactly how we deliver on that without splashing our existing ratepayers. And for me, that's one of the reasons for moving the motion that I did originally, because throughout this process, and I'm glad it's not only myself but others in the community who've been presented by facts within this process that have changed, caused us to reflect and look at what the best approach is. Because at the core of this, we should always be asking the question, what is the best thing for our residents and our ratepayers? And that doesn't matter to me as much as you're elected by the residents and ratepayers of Gorma. If there are people on the other side of that line that is the council boundary into it, that we will see, that we need to take into account what's best for them as well. And so I think by the time we've come to that, the conclusion which I personally come to is that Concordia and Hewitt, along with the development of Cudler, would not be financially sustainable for the town of Gorma to advance with. I think the decision the minister has come to is reasonable, and that's not to say that in the future there doesn't need to be looking at boundaries, not just here in the greater north, but around the state. But it is to say that at the current time, we need to put our ratepayers first. We can't smash our existing ratepayers to pay for the development and deliver on those ambitious housing targets that the state government has. To finish, I do know there is concern which has been raised here, has been raised in state parliament, and has been raised in the community about this process. It is not a good process, and I don't think there is much doubt surrounding that. I think that it's appropriate to advocate process be better? Because unfortunately this has taken an extraordinary length of time to conclude this. And it has also been adversarial in a way which hasn't been healthy for our relationship with our neighbouring councils. And that's not to say that there's the way that parties conducted themselves isn't a part to play in that, but the process itself is obviously not up to the task. As has been said both here and in state parliament. So I think advocating for a better process is reasonable, one that's timely and one that realises the ambitions of our community, of our council and our state government, which is to work together more collaboratively to benefit the people that live in our area, no matter which side of those boundaries they fall on, and work together for the benefit of everyone. So with that, I'm ready to move the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Solomon. I'm looking for a seconder. Did you want a second? Did you want a second? Oh, okay. Look, I might call for a second there, and then we'll look for an. If you're happy to second, would you like to speak first? Sorry, Councillor Hughes. I'll come back to your amendment, and then we'll see if the mover and seconder are happy.
Thank you for that, Mayor. Look, there's the cost between the revenue, rough figures of 45 million and service levy of about 40 million. It's extremely narrow margin and unexpected cost escalations, infrastructure, delivery delays and overruns can turn that surplus very quickly and easily into a deficit. Keep in mind that the full revenue when these things come into line is when they are fully matured. Council needs to front load or gradually absorb service costs well before the full revenue flows through. As Councillor Solomon mentioned, that's going to be rate rises or taxes. Infrastructure and capital costs are likely underestimated human services, road, water, sewer, etc. Will these be provided by the developer's estate? Council's obligations may be well more than projected. Change in assumptions, environment, GAR, change growth boundaries, inflation, change in input costs and labour materials might cause service costs to increase faster and well exceed revenue. Investors already rejected aspects of the Boundary Commission's recommendations for Concordia and Hewitt, noting community opposition and Barossa's prior investments. This could mean revenue estimates won't all come in. Revenue estimated won't all come to law in full, part, or boundary transfer might be rejected. The modelling suggests possible upside, especially long term if boundary change is approved, fully and growth occurs as planned. But that margin between revenue and cost is real, not to be taken lightly. In the short, medium term, all would likely bear a lot of the costs in infrastructure, servicing, planning, transition, before collecting the projected and well-needed revenue. On top of that, the boundary reform process is self-driven, slow, confrontational and unclear, taking almost 6 months to reach this point, making it impossible to model any true financial impacts or plan properly for growth. Continuing to chase large boundary changes now risks undermining those investments, creating costly disputes and draining staff time and ratepayers' money for little chance of success. Given the uncertainties, using these numbers to base major decisions is risky. There are no guarantees from the State Department, the HUD, about cost sharing, infrastructure funding or stage growth. So the town of Gawler original boundary reform submission in 2019, the landscape has completely changed. Barossa Council and the state government have already invested heavily in planning Concordia, Greater Adelaide Regional Plan, plus the Cutler Growth Area inside our existing boundaries, which we will require significant new spending from the town of Gawler. Any financially modelling that exists is no longer valid. Continuing to chase large boundary changes now risk undermining those investments, creating costly disputes and draining staff time and ratepayers' money for little chance of success. Instead, we should lock in the non-controversial boundary adjustments, redirect our effort into regional collaboration with the Barossa Adelaide Regional Planning Councils. Acting together gives us more leverage with the Minister and state agencies to secure infrastructure, funding and services for the town of Gawler. Cuddle the Northern Parklands then fight over boundaries does. The approach protects the town and core, our ratepayers, preserves regional relationships and focuses on limited resources where they need it most. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Warner. Now, I've got an amendment, I believe, by Councillor Hughes. Sorry, Councillor Hughes, I didn't see your email come through. Just as a bit of governance advice, I would take the amendment, ask for a seconder. No? Oh, I've got one nodding and one shaking their head. Sorry, hang on. I'm just getting some technical advice here. Sorry, just for clarity, can we put up the proposed words for Councillor Hughes, just so I can talk to those? Is that okay? Yes, just for the benefit of the chamber, and the benefit of Councillor Hughes. The proposed amendment from Councillor Hughes is actually an alternate motion in light of the fact that 3C, it's actually talking essentially about almost the direct opposite effect. So my recommendation, Mr. Mayor, is that this be treated as an alternate motion. So should the motion before us fail, then Councillor Hughes will be at liberty to move this motion, but I don't believe it should be accepted as an amendment. Sorry, just doing a quick reread myself. Councillor Hughes, I'm inclined to take that advice with all due respect. We will have to see how this motion plays out. I'm happy to accept an alternative should this not be successful. Yep. Is that, yes, moving forward, would you like to speak to the current motion? And then, yeah, we'll go from there.
Yes, sometimes the mover and seconder are actually taken on board some of the suggestions. I mean, in this case, the main changes is really to actually talk to the minister and to the commission and try and work together on an outcome for council. It doesn't stop the process, but it does allow the discussion with the boundary commissioner group and also the minister. I mean, it, I think it allows that discussion to happen, hopefully constructively with all parties. And I agree with talking with the mayors of the adjoining councils, keeping everyone informed. The only change is really to have the discussion and so and also find out about there hasn't been that research really on that negativity for Cutler and Concordia. At the moment, the state government is actually running the development of Cutler and actually running that whole process, a lot of it for council. So it isn't really impacting council greatly. The timeframes as well. So there's massive timeframes for Cutler and also Concordia. So this allows us to look at some forward planning with the minister, the current local government minister, and the boundaries commissioners about the long-term financial planning and also the long-term planning. So my alternative is to try and work together on some outcomes with all involved. And yeah, it's more a collaborative approach. Hopefully, the minister would come to a meeting with councillors and even the boundary commissioners could as well. And I think we'd all like to know how we are going to meet those level targets in that delivery and that time frame. So having the local government minister there, he might be able to get some information from Mick Champion's team and everything else as well. But just how we collaborate and work together in the future is what I'm looking at with the alternative.
So I guess I just note the wordiness of both alternatives, and I'm sorry I haven't had a chance to really delve in, but if I'm not really breaking the process, I'm not looking at the governance office at the moment, but if I was to ask you to pick a point of Councillor Solomon's motion and ask for an amendment or a reword or a variation, which points would it be? Or is that to, because if it's simple and we're talking about asking the mover and seconder to just change or tweak, that's a different conversation to the 1 to 6 points I'm trying to digest along with the current.
I understand where you're coming from. So really looking at whether we can write to the we can expect that meeting is adding a meeting with the minister and also a meeting with the boundary commission. That's really making
So other sort of requests too. So I might put that to the mover and seconder. That is there scope in your current motion, Councillor Solomon and the Selenda, to add an additional point within it to direct myself to make a request to maybe a meeting, and entirely up to the mover and seconder, but just in the picking up the themes.
If you can,
I can get some governance advice, but I think.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Mayor. I'm not going to give some governance advice. I've already given one of that. I'm just going to ask a question. I just want to be clear about the purpose of the meeting. Because if you and I are going to have a meeting, we need to be clear about what the intent of that meeting is. I think that's important for the chamber.
Would you like to provide a response on that? I know we're going off the playbook here, but it's an important topic.
Okay, so basically, I share the same concerns as the mover and seconder from majority. It's just, I've got a point there to discuss the ability of the town of Gawler to ensure that adopting the boundary commission's recommendations will not negatively impact the delivery of the South Australian Government Housing Roadmap. So, how that housing roadmap, I think staff actually get a lot out of that as well as us, and also having the boundary commission and the minister involved, I think is the important bit. For that, and just the whole timings of the whole rollout of what the commission, when they made their recommendation, what they thought the timings might be. The timings might be 5, 10 years or even longer. Just what they're thinking with their decision and whether that could be explained and whether that's understood as well.
Okay, so I hope that provides a little bit of clarity. Mover seconder, any appetite to change anything there? I think obviously there are the processes for the council used to follow motions without notice, which I'm happy to accept. However, do you understand?
yes, I think I do. I've heard what Councillor said. I'm not amenable to the change. But if I can have leave at the meeting, I might explain. I won't do it for 5 minutes, but I'll just explain briefly if I can have leave at the meeting.
Councillor Swan requested leave of the meeting. Does he have leave? That is carried.
Councillor Solomon is speaking now. Just briefly, the reason that I'm not amenable to a particular change, I think it does conflict with the intention of the motion which I have put up. It is an alternative. Perspective to the one I've put forward. The intention of this motion is to end this here, this issue to be just and to have it resolved. I think the amendment which Councillor Hughes has proposed seeks to convince the Minister for Local Government of the merit of boundary reforms in the future. And I think that while I hear what Councillor Hughes is saying with respect to his perspective, I don't think it aligns with my motion, and so we've chosen to not really look to the change.
Thank you, Councillor Solomon. Okay, so we've had a mover, a seconder, had an amendment attempt. That was not successful. We've had someone speak again. Discussion. You've got a question, Deputy Mayor White? Absolutely.
Thank you, Mayor-elect. Just a question. So, in regards to the motion that's on the table at the moment, if it is resolved, we write to the Minister and saying that we support the 3 zones that you have said to remove, but we'd encourage you to consider the remaining zones. And once that happens, obviously it is up to the Minister to then decide to write or go to the Boundaries Commission, ask if they were to represent their report, then present the report again in theory if they agreed with it to the Minister, and then the Minister would have a final say. Is all of that I've said there correct, factually? And then secondly, if that process took place, I presume along many of those steps there would be consultation between ourselves, local government minister, the BDO, neighbouring councils, etc. Probably at multiple points. The minister at the end of the day has the final say, but he's probably not going to change over one resolution from our council. I would assume there would be conversations in the works throughout that. I think what we decide tonight is purely a recommendation from our council. It is not the final say because that ultimately does rest with the local government minister. Is everything you've said factually correct? If there isn't, could you please correct me? Thank you.
Mr. Speaker. Thanks, Mr. Mayor-elect. Just to clarify, we'll talk about the motion that's before us. So if I can draw your attention to forward D, which is on the screen there, that's written out, supporting the minister's position. So everything that's quoted there is saying that Town Angola currently would agree with the minister's current position, and that's the position that was contained in the letter that we received. Just for clarity, it was the minister saying that he would not approve Concordia Hewitt and 3A North coming into the Town of Gawler. What the effect of this motion is, in essence, I guess, to agree with the minister's position. My understanding about the steps that are currently occurring as we speak or will occur, as the minister has said, regardless of what I think what we resolve tonight, and so since we're agreeing with what's in the letter, the minister has gone back to the Boundaries Commission and asked them to reconsider their recommendations. And the reason he's done that is in light of, I understand, of the legal advice that he's received, that he either has to accept or reject the recommendation. He doesn't have the power to amend. So I believe what he's trying to achieve is a recommendation that he can accept in full. And what that would achieve is, if call them the main components were to happen, we still have those minor amendments which would still be put out as the Town of Gawler. Those minor anomalies that would be good to rectify. Whereas if the Boundaries Commission, for example, comes back and says, sorry, Minister, we're not prepared to amend it, then I believe the Minister would be left in a position to reject the whole lot, in line with the statement he's put at the end of his letter, said, I also say that I will not be approving areas 1, 2 and 3 in accordance. So I think he's making a pretty categorical statement. That's my understanding of the process.
Does that answer your question, Deputy? It does. For any further discussion, Councillor Samuel?
Thank you, Mayor Nathan. It's great that we're talking about this and so forth, and we've had, I thought the gallery would have been full tonight, that we would have had to bring a coffee machine in for everybody. We had 2 people here tonight that really passionately told us all a story. It's not a story, it's a fact that they've told from Mr. Tooley and from Adrian. Now, and then we got a lot of work done by Councillor Solomon. We got that motion which I'm so glad to hear, and then also from Councillor Hughes, also passionate about these sort of things. The timeline, 5 to 10 years. I mean, I'll leave you the phone number if I'm up there. You can phone me and tell me what happened in 10 years, you know. And the other thing I'd just like to point out, it was just pointed out about D. Sorry, can you put it back up on D? But you might have looked, I live in Metalova Drive, and you know what that says there? North of Carlton Road. At the moment, I live in Gawler. I don't want to leave Gawler unless I go away in a box. The boundary should have said there, Barossa Highway. So there's a lot of things not right, and I'm so glad that we're discussing this matter because this can't be stopped overnight. I spoke to the CEO, as always, talk about these things. He said, yes, I know, we're going to have a big talk about this. We can't rush. We've got to consider everything that's been put forward here tonight and so forth. And as I said, we've heard some very good discussion tonight, but where is our community? This is such a big thing for Gawler and the community. But thank goodness we've got a couple up there that came in and took time out to tell us all about this. So I welcome the point that we go on and talk constructively about what we can do, what we can afford to do, as Councillor Solomon said, you know, like with the amount of homes and so forth to be built in the Cumber area. Well, gee whiz, that's going to be a long way down the road too. So all of these things are a long way down the road, but we want to work now constructively with what we've got and how we can work it. We've got a finance manager in the room here, and I don't know how they handle all the problems that we put to them, but I believe we've got a great team of people working with us here, and we've got to listen to our community, to our councillors that are coming up with solid ideas so that we can move forward. But certainly that area B, I'd certainly like to see that line in there, Calgary, north of Carlton Road. I don't know who did their homework up there, but that's come from the minister. If I get a kick in the belly over there, I don't care, but I don't want to end up with Ross.
Thank you, Councillor Solomon. So, thank you, Councillor Sample. Yes, I've read the names wrong, obviously. It's been a bit of a day. Do I have any further conversations? I saw you hand first, and I'll come to you, Councillor Valonga. Councillor Davies.
Yeah, look, so the first thing, I haven't really had the chance to read Councillor Hughes' potential amendments. I think it was sent through at 6:30 or something like that. So, and neither Councillor Solomon's amended motion or Councillor Hughes' are the ones on my agenda, so it's a bit hard to directly compare and contrast. But I was planning to support this motion. I think not that I necessarily do agree with a lot of the decisions, but acknowledging they are the decisions and we're not going to get somewhere from potentially, haggling over it in a motion. I think what we do need to really hammer home and be an active part in, as the motion says, is the process, which is not good. The minister himself acted swiftly when it was put across his desk, but the 6-year process beforehand was far from ideal. In those 6 years, it could have been any number of local government ministers. I believe there have been 5 local government ministers since 2019 when this was first suggested. So, depending on when it's finished up, it could have been based on the decision of any number of people with any number of, and so, and it really affects time-sensitive submissions like Concordia because it was rejected on the basis of being already deep into future planning, which is true, but it wasn't true when it was sent in 2019. And so it sort of sat somewhere else for 6 years, and then they say, sorry, you're too late, which is, it's not fault of the minister because it's not, it's accurate that they're deep in cleaning, and the minister only got it on his desk like a month ago. But, for the government to put in a submission early about Concordia and then to have it, nothing happened for the first 4 years or so, and then have a boundary investigation, and then have a commission that has points of difference with the investigation, and the minister to sort of say, I don't like the commission's report, has all led to this this system that doesn't seem to be functioning, and there doesn't seem to be a process where priorities are clear on what is the main process for how we determine these changes. For Hewitt, for example, the investigators said, well, a lot of the residents in Hewitt don't want to rate rise, and there was a lot of people who came to that forum and said we don't want to rate rise. And then the commission said, well, that's not really our priority because we're looking at what's the metropolitan boundary, what's the communities of interest, what are the sort of realities of the road infrastructure. And then so they said, well, the fact that the residents don't want the rates to be higher is less of a priority for us, so they're going to disagree with the decision. And then it comes to the minister, and the minister has a third view again. And that's something that for a process is very difficult to navigate because we need to be able to understand, because if we knew the process was we need to go to the forum and make sure that the residents aren't unhappy about rate rises, that's a completely different submission than we think this is a community of interest. And when there's no clear process or no clear meaning of what do you want out, what does the commission or the minister want out of a submission, it leads to a situation where I can't imagine any other council is going to ever be eager to use this current system because it could be a grab bag of many things. And I don't actually think that it was necessarily a wrong idea to investigate this stuff because as Mr. Tooley has said, as Councillor Solomon has said, they've been changing their minds based on information that has been gathered because this process went ahead to say we need to gather this information because this is an important topic. And we need this information to make these decisions. And so that part's all good. Investigations are not inherently a waste when the investigation is on something that clearly matters. But the process itself has been very jumbled and it's led to a system that's very difficult to navigate. And yeah, so that's I guess my thoughts on all that.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. Councillor Volland.
Can we raise the motion, please?
Is that a formal motion? So, important conversation, but if you are going to move a motion to put the motion, I'm going to have to accept that as a formal motion. So, I'm going to put the formal motion. Put the motion. All those in favour to. Oh, sorry, I need a second to put the motion. There being none, your formal motion lapses for the need of a second. Sorry, Councillor Valonga. I note you've spoken already to talking to that amendment. Would you like to speak again? Yeah, I'm happy to. Councillor Hughes seeks the lead to speak again. Does he have it? He has the lead. Thank you, Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Councillor, and other councillors. Congratulations on the mayor's motion. I agree with everything that's been said basically tonight, like it has been, like we had UIPS consultants at our community meetings. So if we, as councillors, add up the hours that we spend on the process, it's huge. And it did go for a very long time. So, I mean, and that's one of the reasons why I'd really want us to, if we can, work with the minister and the commissioners, so we can actually get something working with them and not done to us, or so some way actually working with the Boundary Commission, because they did come up with a resolution, and the minister have come up with a different resolution. But if we can discuss that with the minister and the Boundaries Commission, and actually work through that, hopefully all the benefits. We've spent a lot of money on this whole process, and I'd like not to have wasted that money as has been suggested. I don't think it's and the information that was provided to the Boundary Commission recently from Council was fantastic. I think that really swayed the Boundary Commission to make the decision that they did make. That information is very valuable information. I think, so as we've heard tonight, also from the sporting clubs, we do have a lot of our community, I think, will be as a community of interest, and the sporting clubs that are part of that interest benefit by adjustments to our boundary, and that's why in the past we've moved to go through this process. So unfortunately, I can't support this motion because it does stop and basically mean the investment's not there anymore. I don't think my motion affects our reputation damage with the minister or the commission. I think it allows the dialogue to, and I don't think there's a hurry either to make a decision tonight. I'd actually like to know what it's actually going to cost us, is, as Councillor Solomon mentioned about costs for Cutler and Concordia and how Paul is going to afford that, but whether that cost of what was suggested was going to be the same for the two councils anyway. So how is that going to be? And if there might be economies of scale coming onto one council as well. At the moment, Cutler is well supported by the state government. They're doing a lot in that space for council, which is really helpful. I just think that we don't need to make this rapid decision. We got notified, was it Thursday or Friday afternoon? And it was right on the decimal of us being able to put motions on notice or anything like that. So as councillors, we haven't been able to hear anything. I asked if a report was going to be coming to the council, and the only report we're really getting is the letter from the minister, from staff. So I'd really like to actually get a report from council and actually be involved a bit further. So that's why I'd be voting against this motion and hoping that you'll support my supplementary motion, is so we can actually work together with the commissioners, not fight the minister, but work with the minister as well to see what the minister is talking about with us and the future growth of our area, Concordia and Cuddy, and actually pull that apart and look at the costings. Councillor Solomon said that's going to be a lot of money. It'd be good to have that in a report, or further information from whether it's from the Honourable Nick Champion's office or whoever's office that has this information. I think it's really important for us to actually get further information, further negotiations, and sort of work in this process, because Concordia and Cutler are going to be really long-term proposals. Boundary reform is also can be a long process, or it could be a really short process. the minister may subdivide other councils at some stage as well. But I think we need to be part of that process and part of those negotiations, which is why we've invested so much time and money over the years in the process. So I don't want to see that wasted. And I do really think that if we can work with the Boundaries Commission and with the minister, we can get a better outcome. So that's why we're going against this.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Sorry for my coughing fit there. Do I have any further discussion? Deputy Mayor, if you'd like to speak.
Thanks, Mayor-elect. Thank you everyone for the discussion tonight. It's obviously quite an important topic and has been going on for quite some time in the council. I see, my role here as being representative of the Gawler community. Of course, that weighs up a lot of things. It weighs up what is best for our community today. It also weighs up what's going to be best for our future community. Try not to dwell on the past too long. I think hindsight's a wonderful thing, and there's probably lots of things throughout all of our lives we maybe regretted afterwards. I think it's pretty clear that this system was flawed, and I think all parties involved know that. So I don't really want to focus too much on what's happened in the past, but just take a very logical approach to where we are right now. I can see where Councillor Hughes is coming from big time. I think I'm all for dialogue and all for trying to resolve and trying to get a great outcome, taking into account what the CEO, when he answered my question earlier, said around what this process actually looks like. I guess if this resolution passes tonight, doesn't necessarily mean anything tangible at the moment. Ultimately, the system, however flawed it is, leaves the final decision with the Minister for Local Government, and the Minister has told us right here in the black and white that those three areas, two of major ones being Hewitt and Concordia, are just not up for grabs. I think that's pretty clear, and it's stated that that's not going to change. I know that the intention of that, of our sort of Gawler Council's investigations in 2019 were specifically looking at those two areas as two major things. It's been a constant debate. But I think the fact that right now the local government minister is telling us that they are going to remain within their respective councils is probably a big indicator that if we keep trying to push, that's just not going to be practical. What we do have on the table is, hey, we found some tidy ups within that report. The Commission actually recommended as well. It's something we were looking at. These are areas that have been investigated thoroughly, consulted with the community, albeit more consultation and investigation work will have to be done. And looking at picking up areas like Gawler Belt, cleaning up some of those sort of lines that were drawn on a map that didn't take into account rivers or highways and those sorts of things, and go, hey, we spent a lot of money on this investigation. Maybe we can get some bang for our buck. Let's reconsider accepting these recommendations, and then, of course, continuing with some consultation, bringing the community along with what that will look like. To me, that's, I guess, what the recommendation that's sitting on the table is. It's still that open dialogue, but I do think it is accepting the reality that, unfortunately, we've missed the boat on Concordia for one way or another, and Hewitt is also not up for grabs. I think, whether you believe that they should be part of Gawler Council, I think, sadly, for better or for worse, is now irrelevant. The local government minister says, no, this has gone on for 6 years, this is what the decision is. And what I do think it does leave open is the great work that is already happening in regards to engagement with our neighbours. And I would argue that the engagement and work, collaboration with our councils is better than it's ever been before to lead to better outcomes for our community. At the end of the day, infrastructure, getting down rates, transparent and open communication are things that I know the Gawler community really values. And where the line of Gawler is on a map doesn't actually affect those things. But what does affect those things is working with our neighbours to make sure that we can fund those things in order to, maintain steady rates, have decent infrastructure so that you can find a park on the main street. Because at the end of the day, that's really what the community wants. So I'm all for continuing to talk and collaborate, but I do admit that I think this has been far too long. The system is flawed, and I think that we acknowledging that to the minister, saying, hey, next time this happens, can we please tidy this up so the next council doesn't have to go through everything that we've been through? And then also acknowledging that, look, whether we want it or not, yes, we've spent this money, But the minister said, according to it, are not up for grabs. Let's accept that. Let's see if we can get any of the bits and pieces that have come out around that commission's report. And if we can, great, we'll work with those communities, we'll work with state government in order to make sure that happens and our neighbouring councils. But if it doesn't, then this issue is to bed completely. I think it's fair to say, you know, you don't have to be too of a keen political observer to think that this Labor government is, you know, very likely to win another election next year. And I think it gives them a mandate to do some widespread changes across the state. Local government election reform has been tabled in Parliament at the moment. I wouldn't be surprised if there's more work around local government, as has been alluded to over previous decades. I'm not a fortune teller, but if the state government was re-elected next year, I wouldn't be surprised if there was conversations around what does 68 councils look like across SA and how could that change. So instead of us focusing on ourselves, I think we need to go, okay, this is what's been decided. We need to move with the time, see if we can get anything else out of it for our community, and then go with the flow and see what will happen over the coming 5-10 years as Concordia grows, as Cudley grows within our boundaries, as what Rosebery grows, all of these things. There's a lot of moving parts, and I think that the initial proposal of might have had merit is outdated now. It's time that we see the writing on the wall and we go, okay, let's move on and see what else we can do. So that's my probably very logical approach, thinking about the Gawler community at front of mind at the moment. I'm not saying that boundary reform isn't an important issue, but I think there's probably some other concerns that our community has that I think we should be focusing on. So from that point of view, while I appreciate the conversation around the table, that's where I stand at the moment. So I'm happy to support Councillor Solomon's motion and look forward to seeing where this goes, but also acknowledging that, okay, it's time for us as a council to go, yep, we did what we could, let's mature and go, let's focus on the issues that are actually of high priority to our community at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe everyone has spoken. So before I ask you to close the debate, I'll just say a couple of words. I'm just picking up on the theme. I won't repeat anything anyone said, and it's a bit of a surreal moment for myself because I've been one of the debaters in the chamber about this particular item. Some of the outcomes going their cycle is what it is. However, I believe the role of council now, and one that I'm happy to spearhead, is making sure that we do provide that feedback, that regardless of where you sit on this particular item, 6 years is just not acceptable for any proper decision making. And some of the holes potentially we haven't done it and leaves I guess, some room for opinion and back and forth. I think this process as a whole and us, what we've now been through, if a council rang myself, I wouldn't recommend embarking on this particular process. And I think that's a sentiment that I'm picking up from this chamber as well. And I think it's fair and reasonable that we provide that feedback professionally and fairly to the Commission as well. And the relationship that we're starting to form with the local government minister, for what reason is now null and void, is one that we need to keep on building on, as with our other ministers and neighbouring councils. But if we could get to a position where this region positions itself to be supporting each other because the acknowledgement of growth that is on our doorsteps is something that we all need to be managing regionally. I think that would be a really good outcome and something that does start with our regional collaboration that we now note has just now passed the chambers of 4 councils for the first time in history. That is a really good outcome and one that we've been driving here in Gawler and also being driven in our neighbouring councils. And that, I think, sends a really powerful message and one we probably haven't seen before in history, and our relationships with our state government counterparts, with the open and frank ability to have these discussions, I think will be able to garnish those positions that you spoke of, Deputy Mayor, about how this looks moving forward. And absolutely, we do need to be providing that feedback to these processes, because if we don't, what we see is the processes that never change, and then the change that I think we can agree needs to happen moving forward more broadly doesn't have the best opportunity to do it because the process to protect decision makers isn't there. So to that end, I'll ask for Councillor Simon, would you like to close the debate? And then I'll put that motion.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for contributing to this. I think it's been quite robust, and I think it's done justice to just how important this issue is. It's been something that we've talked about for a long time, and I want to finish with the same question that I started with. Really, what is the best thing for the people of our region? And I think that whichever side of the debate we've been on throughout this entire process, that has been the question people have turned their minds to. I genuinely think that whether you were advocating that Cordia and Hewitt and those areas be included in Gawler or not be included, it was genuinely approached from the perspective of this is the best thing for the people that live within this area, and this is the best thing for our region. At the present time, I'm of the view, certainly that the best thing moving forward is for those areas, Cordia and Calbevan north of Cotton Road, not to be included in town of Gawler. I think that it's really important to note the changes which are required to make this process something which is collaborative. When I was first elected to council, I was extremely critical of the way that we approach things, particularly as it pertains to our neighbours. I was critical of this process, the way we approach this. But those are things that I don't really ever want to talk about again. I want for it to end now, and for us to put this to bed once and for all. We have new leadership, a new mayor, a new CEO. We have a new chamber. A lot has changed in the world since we first embarked on this process. And one thing which has been a stop on us genuinely working with our neighbours to collaborate on the things that benefit our ratepayers, answering that question of what's best for our community, it is stopped by having this continue. And so I want to once and for all ensure that we put this issue to bed and we can move on, because we have an enormous challenge in front of us right now. Enormous challenge, whether it's the councils in our region or to the state government. We have growth on our doorstep which needs to be addressed, and it needs to be addressed in the spirit of collaboration. We cannot do this alone. So we have a decision, we have a very clear decision, and one which I hope we make tonight, that we say this is the new direction that Gawler is taking, and here's the part we're going to play in our region, because we either fail our community by going it alone with the challenges that we face, or we turn a corner and we decide that we are going to work with Barossa, with Adelaide Plains, with Light, with the state government, with the federal government to address pressures that are going to be put on our community by this move. So I hope that tonight, once again, Gawler, rather than being a bad example of a test case, can, in the spirit of collaboration, work towards this test case, which is the regional collaboration, and take this block off of that. At the same time, making reasonable adjustments, which I think should be made to some of the boundaries to get rid of the weird inconsistencies. But I thank everyone for the debate tonight, and let's move forward in the spirit of collaboration.
Thank you, Councillor Solomon. That motion is now closed. I'm going to put that motion. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. I was predicting Councillor Hughes, so I was looking at him. Councillor Vallelonga has put a division. Those who said so, I'm going to ask those for to please stand as I call your name. So those for are Councillor Vallelonga, Councillor Davies, Deputy Mayor White, Councillor Lorna, Councillor Samble and Councillor Solomon. Those against are Councillor Hughes. The motion is carried. Thank you, elected members. abstain. So, yeah, all good. Okay, moving forward, we are now, to move forward, we are moving back on to item 9.1. We have an officer's recommendation. I'm looking for a mover. Oh, sorry, is there any questions first on this item? Councillor Hughes?
Yeah, happy to move this. It is going out for consultation, but it also includes the visitor centre and the ambulance station, which is, yeah, and it'd be interesting to see the comments we get back on this project.
Thank you. Councillor Zimmer, would you like to say anything? Would you like to say anything? Thank you very much. If the chairman would oblige, I was going to ask a question to the CEO just in regards to the consultation process. The documents are basic documents, but are we going to try to, I guess, garnish specific information through that process?
Thank you, sir.
You are correct in that we won't just be putting the documents out and asking for general feedback. We will be guiding the community to specific components. The component in particular, and I take Councillor Hughes's lead, I do want to particularly understand the community's thoughts on the ability to lease commercially for a longer term, the VRC and the ambulance station in particular. So we will provide an articulated community feedback approach rather than just trying to confuse people. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. CEO, do I have any further discussion on this item? We'll all talk out in the microphone. Councillor Hughes, are you happy to, for me to put that motion? I'm going to put that motion. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Thank you, members. So, we now have item 9.2, Golf Sport and Community Recreation Facility Plan on page 30. Which have a check out. Okay, what we'll do is we'll stop, we'll just have a break before we go into item 9.2, and we'll be back in at 9:05. Thank you. All right, we might get started again. We'll pick up from where we left off on item 9.2, page 30 of your agenda. Looking for any questions on this item before we look for a mover. You've got a question, Councillor Hughes?
Yeah, I sort of support the principle. My understanding this will go out for consultation. It's just about the wording in point 2 about the appropriate investment for elder REITs. My concern is, the open space is valuable to that area and how that's going to be handled. If it's housing, you might get 12.5% open space, but I'd like to see 25% or what. And I can't say partial investment because which part, but just that wording for our community as well.
Yep, no, I'll get some clarity around that, and I think that's probably the appropriate investment language. But are you able to give a little bit more weight to what's moving for?
No, certainly I can provide wording that your thoughts around open space, absolutely the same conversations David and I and the team have been having about whatever happens with that parcel of land, a substantial portion of open space needs to be retained. I'm happy to come on the record here, making a commitment that for me that's embodied in that language, that whatever happens, it must retain a substantial amount of open space.
Does that provide? Yep. Did you have a follow-up question? Was there any other questions on the report prior to looking for a mover? There being none, are you happy to move that away, Councillor Hughes? Do you want to speak to the item?
I'm happy to move the report, noting the fact that there will be substantial open space negotiated with this investment. So, I think that it's early days to see what's out there, what might go there. It could be a school for needs and over, could be all sorts of things. So, just be interesting to see what does come out of this.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a couple of reports on this one coming back for sure. Thank you, Councillor Hughes. I'm looking for a second now. Councillor DeLong, you have a second? Would you like to say anything? Any further discussion? Councillor Lorne?
Thank you, Adam. Yeah, my first question is, I'm fully in there on that before.
You can go back to acting there or
That's right. Obviously, there's reports that it's very much like a new Paula Sports Community Recreation Facility plan is scorecard review of our 2016 open space sports and recreation plan. It takes into account the major growth happening not only within Gawler but also in our neighbouring counties, for instance, Gosford, Lyre, Playford. The state government's commitment to the Northern Parkland Delegate Green Sporting Hub is a significant win for our town. It will allow the relocation of the South Port Cricket, Football and Netball clubs from Elder Ridge Reserve into a purpose-built regional facility with co-league community users. This relocation gives us a rare opportunity to look at the future of Elder Ridge Reserve. We must make sure that the reuse of the land delivers real benefits for our community and maintains access to quality open space for local residents. The recommendation feels simply to note the state government's commitment and to confirm that the council will proactively explore appropriate options for Elder Ridge Reserve. And this is about planning ahead, aligning with the regional growth and ensuring our facilities meet community needs now and into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lorne. Any further discussion? Deputy, I'm going to go Deputy Mayor White.
Thank you, Mayor Elect. Just briefly, I'm very happy to support this proposal. I think a little bit similar to the previous resolution. I'm always a little bit sceptical to, it's always a big dip when you're leasing community assets or selling off community land. I think this is an important topic we need to always consider. And I think for a council, often when you sell off an asset, you don't likely get it back. In saying that, I think this is a very practical and smart way to move forward. Just reiterating the concerns of Councillor Hughes, I think it just needs to be, open space is going to be a clear element here. And then, of course, consulting particularly with the immediate local community around what that space could look like. is going to be crucial for me. But obviously, this is very much early days. So yeah, very very happy to support this and think that again, the justification being if we can sell off to offset costs that will be around the new Northern Parklands and what that will look like for the South Gawler Sporting Club, I think that makes perfect sense for our community. So happy to support it.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Simon.
Thank you, Your Worship. Wait. Sorry, it's been cheeky of me. But I have to get used to that.
This was going to be later than everyone else.
Yeah.
Formalities are yet
I think that this is obviously the work that's been done around the Northern Parkland and particularly delivering better sporting infrastructure is worthy of some acknowledgement here. And I think obviously this space that we're building at the moment, echo what's been said about needing to retain some amenity for the residents that do live in that area. There is very little around there, and we can't simply just say there's the Northern Parklands south of it. So, that's enough. I think it is quite important. But I would mention that I think there's a real opportunity here to we get an outcome for people in that area that is almost better than what they have at the moment, in the sense that that's even if there is slightly less open space, it's not available to them for public use at all times because of its current use. So I think this is an opportunity to have something there which will be a benefit to the community while also making some huge strides forward in terms of delivering the sporting infrastructure that we need to for those sporting clubs that currently occupy it. And as we know, have for a long time been advocating to get something better, and that'll now happen in Parklands. So, acknowledging and placing my importance in what Councillor Hughes said there about retaining that open space, but looking forward to seeing where this goes.
Thank you, Councillor Stallman. Any further discussion? I just wouldn't mind just making a bit of a note. This report is actually one of the first reports that we should really be excited about on a multi-step process that we're about to undertake. That not only talks about the rehousing of South Gawler netball, cricket, and football, but it actually is one of the first steps of that partnership model that we are trying to undertake as council with state government. We'll deliver on a regional facility that will be legacy infrastructure for our region more broadly. But we also do need to note our master plans more broadly as well to make sure that we are looking across all codes, and this is really one of the projects that we need to hold in a high importance to make sure that we are playing our part in the region. But this is a very interesting proposal where we have the ability to divest land for, in my opinion, a better community outcome that leads to bigger picture outcomes that taking our report to this chamber has been years in the making, and this is one of those first initial steps that we're going to be able to start seeing playing out. So congratulations, Bryce, to you and your team. I know this is something you've been working hard on behind the scenes with a multitude of user groups, and there's been a lot of moving parts. So yeah, looking forward to seeing what comes out of this, and really making sure we get our message right, because change is always hard, but we do need to make sure that messaging is right and that we do deliver an outcome for that area that is better than the one that is there right now with the facility we have. So that said, Councillor Hughes, are you happy? Do you want to close the motion? You're happy for me to put that motion? So I'm going to put that motion. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Thank you, members. Moving on to item 9.3 on page 38, we've just got the policies. Any questions? Did you have any questions before I look for a mover? You've got a question, Councillor Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Just very briefly, is this one, is there anything we should be concerned about given the topic? And two, I just noticed that mentions that CEOs adopted this previously, but then we're looking to adopt it here. Is that an administrative error or anything we should be noting?
No, certainly as Tom and Good Authority, that there's nothing in here that council should be concerned about. The nuance with the previously the council adopted the internal procedure. I'm putting in proposition to council that really that's for the CEO to put into place, but council should certainly adopt the overarching policy which in essence guides me. Yeah.
If I could just add to that, in that the Public Interest Disclosure Act actually requires the CEO to adopt the public interest disclosure policy.
Does that provide you the answer you're looking for? Yep. Looking for you've got a question, Councillor Hughes?
Just a quick one. I was a responsible officer in my last role. There's two female responsible officers. Like whether I came from whether a male or a female. I mean, it's not dictated in legislation or anything like that. But, it's trying to have equality as well. Is there any issues or any thoughts on that sort of thing? So it's something that we've tried to do across. I think state government. It's not a formal thing, but it's sort of thing that agencies do.
So I just got a question. Yeah, you happy to proceed?
I'm happy to just make comment through the mayor-elect. I am not aware of that sort of protocol that's been followed in previous councils where I've been a responsible officer in governance. We've had similar actually. It's in females. You raise a point. I guess the training is separate to council through the ITAC office, so you can't just appoint someone, they have to have done the training. But I guess the CEO as the principal officer of the council under the Act can appoint staff once they've done the training, so I guess something for the CEO potentially if he wanted to change that. And yeah, I wasn't aware of that protocol previously.
So some food for thought there. Brian, did you have a question?
If I may, Nathan, because one of the things that used to happen, and that sort of thing, because we're a member of the LTA and we pay money to be that member and so forth, we used to quite often have a regular education awareness meetings and that sort of stuff. And I mean, we've got young people like Nick and Ethan and Isaac, Tony are teaching me more than I ever knew, but about these legal things that Ethan is mentioning and so forth. I just think there's been some times when, you know, all of us have thought, oh, hang on a minute, I didn't know about that or whatever it may be. Is there a need in conjunction with what we're moving here tonight to maybe now that the new mayor has been elected, that sometime in the future there may be one or two, you know, like evenings when we can have somebody from the LTA that knows what they're talking about with this sort of legal stuff and that sort of stuff, and then they can just put us up to date. Like the education and awareness, I think nowadays it changes every day, and it's not about. I think it fits a little bit around what Ethan is saying. You know, what are we doing with this? Because a lot of us don't know.
You're happy to answer that and also not to take away from what Susie knows.
Susie's the font of the knowledge. It's okay. No, I was just going to share my thoughts about that regular education, bringing up to date elected members in terms of what's current in terms of the requirements to be a councillor. One of the things that I've observed is if you reflect on the training,
that you would have received when you first became elected member this term, there was a whole bunch of information you were given, and I'm guessing most councillors would have been overloaded. And if I'd asked you 3 weeks later to recount to me what you learned, it would have been difficult. I think there's too much factor in the first couple of weeks. So I'm actually advocating for a more protracted approach where you might have some high levels to go up front and then progressively, maybe over the next 6 months or more, you actually train and share information with the members. So that's my intention. So it's a piece I'll be taking notice. May not happen in the last 12 months of this term, but it'll certainly be, I think, our next group that come in.
Thank you. Any further questions before I ask for a mover? There be none. I'm looking for a mover for the officer's recommended deputy mayor. You're happy to move that way? So to speak.
Just briefly, happy to move that, and I want to thank Susie for the report, and I think that Susie Nikita and the governance team are exceptional in what they do, and I'm sure if we had any training courses, that'd be more than adequate to be able to teach that to us. So thank you, guys.
Thank you. You're happy to second both and all comments as well, Councillor Sandwood? Yep, perfect. Any further discussion? There be none. Are you happy for me to put that motion, Deputy Mayor? Yep. I'm going to put that motion. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on, we have item 9.4, the monthly finance report. Another favourable outcome there, noting. Any questions on the monthly finance report? There be none. I'm looking for a mover. You're happy to move that way, Councillor Lorna? Would you like to speak to it at all?
A little bit. It's also noting that there's a favourable variance of about 136 grand, which is good. Noting that some of it's coming from reimbursements, grant reimbursements, 70k from the Good Business Development Group, I believe. Finance costs are lower than forecasted. Note that there is capital work expenditure about 3% of the revised budget. I think it's pretty well normal this time of year for projects and planning going through procurement. Just note that there's a bit of lag over from increases in line marks and contract costs increase, the IT, HCare IT upgrade, some software license adjustments. I find it pretty well. Our financial position remains sound, so that's a good work on that so much. I can't see any major risks, so I'm having some reports in front of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lorna. You're happy to second?
Yeah, I agree with what Vic says there, but there is one question. Under item 3/4 the way down, employee costs, including agency staff. What am I FBI working for us? Who's the agency staff?
Yeah, 3 weeks. I might get David to just enlighten us on that one. Thank you, David.
So, through the chair, council contracts an agency called Randstad, who's an employment provider. Staff through them, especially to work in the pool and at the rec centre, and also some temporary staffing at the civic centre. Also understand that our town services team have a few agency staff as well to ensure that we still deliver our processes. So it's certainly not an FBI. It is an employment agency provider that we have a contract with to provide us with a casual workforce.
That's what they have. As always, David, always got a great answer. The only thing I'm really screwed, but I noticed down there where you see total expenditure 4854 and the total rates come in, so we must urge people, we'll give them a minting if they pay their rates a bit earlier, because we only get 4,279 come in, so we've only got $600 rolling. So anyway, happy to see the report.
Thank you, and I'll remind members that this is that monthly report. We will probably see that quarterly performance report that should collate with this, and that is then our first quarter of our budget cycle. So obviously, always good to keep an eye on these reports. Now, do I have any further conversation about this item? If there be none, Councillor Lorna, you're happy for me to put that motion? I'm going to put that motion. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Information reports, we have nil. We have recommendations from committees on page 109. We've got the office recommendation, and then I've got option 2 on that page. For that on block. Oh, that's okay. Okay, sorry. That's my misread. Yeah. So we've got the YAC report there. So just looking for any recommendations to be adopted. You're happy to move that way, Councillor Davies? Would you like to? Oh, sorry, any questions, obviously. You're happy to move that way, Councillor Davies?
Yeah, so I hope people get the chance to read these minutes of the Youth Advisory Committee when they come up, because they're doing great things. They're something that we've been working with them on recently, which you'll see reflected in the agenda, is they're starting to use the formal processes of the council with questions on notice and motions on notice, discussing issues that are important to them. And that's something that's been, something that I think is very important for this committee if it is to be a proper committee of the council, is that the youth have all of the tools they need to use it to its full ability as a committee. So I'm glad to see that so much is happening in this space.
I tend to agree. Thank you, Councillor Davies. Looking for a second. You're having a second, Deputy Mayor. Would you like to speak?
Yeah, just briefly to echo Councillor Davies' words too. I just wanted to congratulate Thomas Perry and Riley Stewart, who are both in the Warden's Youth Scholarship programs, and also the goodness me, sorry. Are we also adopting the? No, that's the next one. I'm jumping the gun. Thank you. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any further discussion? Yep, Councillor Single.
Thank you. Yeah, and I agree with what Cody has said there, and without a doubt, the staff member, sorry, I just forgot her name, but the report that Nikita has given here explains everything very clearly and what's been done and how the youth is working, and that sort of thing. I just wondered, sometime maybe next meeting or whatever, that a couple from the Youth Advisory Council would just come along and just tell us about, whether membership has grown or whether it's the same membership and all those sort of things, because they're the sort of things that we should know. We're going by looking at the names and that there. But Deborah, that's what I was thinking of, the Youth Development Officer, just a great leader. And as Cody would know by attending those meetings, they certainly have a great coordination with each other. Oh no, that's external bodies. So yeah, so I just wanted to praise them and thanks for the report, Nikita.
And Cody and myself are actually on the YAC. Yeah, we could probably provide that feedback to the YAC as well. And I'm sure with Abby Dale, the chair, there might be some scope here that next time this comes up, maybe they come and talk and answer some of those questions. No worries, thank you for that feedback. Any further discussion on the Youth Advisory Committee item? There being none. Councillor Davies, are you happy for me to put that motion? I'm going to put that motion. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. We're moving on to external bodies. Item 2.1, page 116. Any questions on the minutes or anything? You had a question?
It's a question, and I'm happy to move it. Just a general comment. I've been on the ASIC World Advisory Committee for, on the going sort of thing, that you would have all had this paper, or those that know how to read it properly and what you would think. I'm just wondering, the ASIC World Advisory Committee, I've spoken previously to the CEO that I could not see the benefits of this committee. It takes out time, staff time, all those sort of things. So, but at the last meeting we had, we elected an independent person to be chairperson, which is Peter Smith, who was probably one of the biggest retirement home villages, all age range homes, and so forth. But people that I spoke to were apologies said that they just could not see that there was any value in this. And I spoke to Chris about this and so forth. So, the ASIC World area is a big one. And there's been a lot of grants at the moment out there that people can have and all that sort of stuff. But we put them into use. One of the things that I've been sort of speaking out at those meetings is about transport. Because when you get old and you can't walk, it's hard to get to a meeting at various places. And I've been speaking about over at the Elderly Centre, and what an appropriate name. It means you only know to go there when you're old, and so forth. But 14th Street is a speedway, and the police are constantly there, Mick was there, so he knows how fast they go past, and so forth. I want that crossing across the road, and I keep being told you can't have that. Well, it's Gawler's road. We can make that decision. It's not the government's road, and so forth. And when some darling old fella or lady want to walk across with their walker and someone's coming up at 100 k's an hour, there's not been an accident. I can pray there never will be, but there's a few things like that that are never discussed at these meetings, and there's never anything come out of them. And I mean, you've all seen the report. It's not a very big meeting. The other one I'll probably stick my neck out for is the reconciliation and that sort of stuff. I'm sorry, I just don't agree. And I was reading an apology because I'm not listening to all this, but I'm not going to cry over that. But when you get down to the reports that are supposed to come from the people that we are doing this for, as this committee, again, taking out staff time, and staff are very valuable, and so forth. When it gets to that, the draft RAP discussion deferred to next meeting. Other business deferred to next meeting. Well, I don't think any councillor here would say that it's a meeting, and it's taking up such valuable time. So, I don't know what can happen. Like I say, I have spoken to Chris about it. I'm not going to be the one to say that we shouldn't have it, but I'm conscious of the fact that as staff have all got jobs to do, and maybe we can cut back on these people that we have to hire to fill in gaps when these people here can probably do that sort of thing. So I just wondering, any comments? I'm throwing myself open to the floor. Don't jump on me.
Did you have anything in particular? Well, I know we haven't got a mover or a second, so we're not quite in debate yet, but I don't know if I've got any particular answers for you just yet, Brian. Take your points. You're happy to move it? Yep, no worries. Okay. Yep, all right. So I'm going to look for a second there. You're happy to second, and you'd like to speak? Yep, Councillor Hughes.
In some regards, I agree with Councillor Sam. It's something you've mentioned at previous meetings that have actually failed to get a quorum to this meeting. So I have. It's really important to try and get representation. I understand it is also really difficult sometimes to get representation because people have jobs and other things as well. But I think it's an important committee, But ways and means of holding these meetings where people are available is really important. And there has been something flagged in previous minutes. I've noticed that there was a lot of problems getting a quorum even for some of these meetings.
CEO, are you able to just provide a little bit of an outline on what triggers a potential recommendation of continuing or not to continue across the board?
In essence, Mr. Mayor, it's probably me. Okay, I can trigger that. Or elected as well can trigger. I guess I'm happy to have further conversations. But happy to review them. I know continue the RAP, just thinking about getting quorums and representations. I know the group is working fairly hard on that. They did look at, and I think they amended the time the group was meeting to assist. That's a fair comment over. Yeah, so I know there's some work. I think the RAP one, I'm quite confident that the RAP one will work through the challenge of representation. I think we have further conversation with the AG well, just to get a greater understanding about whether that's achieving or not, whether that's achieving or it's not achieving, or whether there's a different way of doing things. I'll probably do a bit more homework and then work out the best way forward.
Thank you. Councillor?
Yeah, just a question at the moment. What's the actual motion to stop it, to review it?
At this point in time, we're just pretty much noting the minutes of the external bodies. Sorry, no, that was just noting, so, no, we're just in the discussion of the meeting minutes. I do note the conversation of where we've gone, but there is no action other than noting. We might take it offline if you do want to raise one later on, but the one right now is just purely just around the minutes. All good. Any further discussion on the minutes? Councillor Sullivan?
Yeah, just noting what's in the minutes there. I think, and hearing the concerns that fellow elected members raised, I just wanted to add that, at least one of those committees don't have something and serve the other. I think that they do have the capacity to work well and have done at times in the past. I think, engagement is a challenging thing, and it's something which, at times even the Youth Advisory Committee struggled with. But I think that there's certain changes and certain things that are done that we now see an extremely healthy and thriving committee in the Youth Advisory Committee that are raising, some very valid points about the direction that how it should be taken. And just looking at these previous ones from the last motion, there's quite some comprehensive commentary about transport in there, which is good to see. And I think obviously what's in the minutes here is probably for these two items is probably not quite as comprehensive as we'd like to see in some of those conversations. But I certainly think that that there is capacity for to have moving forward. And just as a small note, Councillor Nichols' previous slide about meetings, I almost felt they existed, and I think there's a few moments in this chamber where it's beyond volunteer efforts, moments like these you need meetings.
Thank you, Councillor Solomon. Any further discussion? Are you happy for me to close the debate? Councillor, your thoughts?
Yes, if I can just, there's one of the committee that I thought that would have been very important, and that's the Elderly Centre, City Centre, and I heard what Mick said there, so, when do we actually look at maybe these three particular things, and as Councillor Solomon said, these things in the community are certainly very valuable, and the other day, Mr. Barrett set up a place here with probably 20 stalls, and that was for any old folks like me to come along and find out what do I do when I can't climb on the roof and clean the gutter out, and all these sort of things and so forth. And it was a magnificent show that was held. And I think you came in, anyway, what was it called, David? Sorry.
Through the chair, the Community Services Expo.
Yeah, the expo. It was fantastic, and But that had nothing to do with the Elderly Centre Committee or the aging well. I'm trying to understand that all those things must click in together, so that it's promoted if council's spending money. I think that's where I'm coming from this sort of thing, and we want people to be involved. And I remember the Elderly Centre Committee, which Chris has found time to attend one of them, and so forth. The biggest problem there was getting to there. Like we've got partially blind people and people that still can't walk. They want to be able to get in. And the bus service that the Honourable Tony Piccolo organised for this town is great, but it's not working now because people, if they ring for a bus to be at the meeting at 9 o'clock, the bus comes at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So it's a few areas there where I think it needs to be tightened up.
Thank you, Councillor Samble. All right, that is now closed. I'm going to put that motion. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, we've dealt with, questions on notice. There is nil. Any questions without notice to members? Councillor Hughes?
This is probably more some help than I'm after for a motion without notice, but I'm thinking of some help with some wording, moving my voice, about an update on the boundary reform and the next steps from here, whether I can get any advice from council staff and what would be any benefits to that.
You're happy to answer that? Just noting my questions without notice at the moment.
I'm happy to, don't need a motion, I'm happy to provide an next steps update. Is that what you're seeking? So I'm happy to articulate that. I'm happy to actually just share it by email. Is that, or do you want it more public? Yep, no, that's okay. Happy to bring it back to the next council meeting. Is that what you're saying, Councillor Hughes? Yep. I'm happy to do that without a motion. That's fair.
Are you happy to do a staff recommendation?
Oh, I'm happy to do a short report.
Yep. Does that provide the comfort you're after? Yep. All right. Any other questions without notice? You've got. Yep.
If I may, please, Mayor Nathan. Bryce is gone, but maybe I'll just ask the question Mr. Bannon might be able to answer it. We had the big swap meet on the weekend down at the showgrounds, and 5:30 I got out of bed and it killed me, and got down there, and because our famous MC man was away over in Amsterdam looking after himself and that, and the other person that normally does the PA, they asked me to talk. They don't understand me talking off on him. And I got there, had everything all set up at 6 o'clock. I was just about to say, when there was probably 300 people moving in the gate at 6 o'clock in the morning, because you buy that stuff, we come early. And they said, no, we're not allowed to switch the PA on. I said, I beg your pardon, what am I doing here then? I could still be sleeping and watching something on telly. No, you're not allowed to put it on until 1 minute past 9. I said, everybody be going home by then. I don't understand that. So my question was, and we were conscious of that because there's nothing. The POs were pointing out into the Essex Park. They weren't you're pointing up to the church so that when he says, Hail Mary, he's going to interrupt me or whatever. But I couldn't understand it. So there I am sitting like a stone mullet, and as soon as it went 9 o'clock, I started talking to him and he said, oh, we thought you were on the bloody sleep. I just need to know, because the show society started, I heard he's real early, he gets me going, but I just don't understand that. When you hire the grounds, as we did, and we hired the council of the whole ground, and that, it just didn't make any sense, because no one complained about the sound and all that sort of thing. So I'm just wondering who makes those rules, Mr. Barrett, might be able to answer.
Yeah, happy to take that question. Mr. CEO, would you like to answer that now? I'm assuming it's got something to do with the conditions of lease terms and nuisance act, etc., etc. But would you like to provide?
So through the chair, you can't have noise above a certain decibel level through amplification on a Sunday, which is what was on, prior to 9 a.m. under the Noise and Nuisances Act. So that's the reason for that. And the Global Show does that very well because it commences at 9 a.m. on a Sunday as well.
There you go. Hopefully that answers your question there. Any other questions without notice at this time? There being none, we've dealt with motions on notice. Motions without notice is now resolved through questions without notice. We're now on council member attendance and activities. Councillor Sortman?
I'll go first. I just wanted, I'm sure I missed something here, but I want to start by saying I was recently invited to speak at Trinity College Milton campus, despite being a Southie myself, on a part of an active citizenship program, which they've been working on, where students as part of this program learn about community initiatives that go away and design community initiatives either within the school or within the broader community. And so I was invited to speak on some of the community initiatives that I've been a part of, but also I've become aware of by virtue of being on the council here. And I think that was it was a good presentation, and I'm really looking forward to seeing some of those come through and invite some of those students that should they want to in the future, they can come and present to council on exactly what they're doing at the end of this. But I was glad to be invited there, and thank you to Paul Hughes, Mr. Pearce, who invited me to be part of that. Looking at other things, I can't remember anything, so I'll pass on if something else springs to mind. I'll let you know.
Thank you, Councillor Storman. Any others? I don't know, you're chomping at the bit. Councillor Turnbull.
I'd just like to say about the spotlight, how successful it was. It's become a yearly event, and all the money that's raised goes into the new club rooms, which is going to be up in the Williston development area. And this year, and as you know, the weather wasn't very pleasant, but we had 350 storm, in other words, people coming in, sewing their good gear and all that sort of stuff. And some of the people came from Victoria, New South Wales, and there was also one group that comes down to the regular sales, which goes on around the area, because next Sunday it's on Morgan. So, you know, some of them sort of follow around. But to think, we had the whole grounds full of stalls of people selling stuff, 350 of them. I rang the president tonight, and he couldn't know exactly how many, but estimated around about 3,500 people came. And when you consider how wet and cold it was, I just can't believe people came out for that sort of stuff. But the other thing is too that we weren't allowed to open the gates until 7:30, and people were lined up, which would lead all the way down to the river. What's the place we own down there where the op shop is? They were lined up all the way along the gutter to come in. So I reckon that was pretty incredible because it was similar to the Gorma show, but we weren't allowed to open the gate until that time. Most of the council now has 915 members, and I think probably only around about 40 that actually volunteered to help, because that's one of the things that's happening. It's hard to get volunteers to help out with these sort of things. But no particular finance figures yet, but when you consider that the person coming in the gate only pay $5, I've tried to get them to put it up to 10 because I believe all the money that's got to be spent on hiring the ground and doing it is worth $10. Especially when you look at how much it costs you to go into the shows and things like that around. So that's something we're looking forward to. But every dollar is going to go into building this particular new club rooms, which thanks to many in the council that are helping the committee to sort of move things forward. Disappointing part, nothing in our local papers. And the Bunyip and the leader had nothing in it about the Hawke's Promenade. I don't know what happened. Nobody can give me exactly the facts, but guess what? It was on Facebook because guess what? Somebody put it on there and they reckon everybody comes to an event because of Facebook. But the Bunyip had nothing and the leader had nothing. So that was a disappointment for the club.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Councillor Saul?
Yes, but how could I forget? We've elected members were invited to the North Vikings Inline Hockey Winter Finals. I think Councillor Stanwood attended. I know Councillor Davies attended with me as well, and just a thank you to Peter King as well for inviting us down there to see those facilities down there in use and get a broader view of the sporting which occurs in town, especially from some of the clubs and the footy clubs. So I think that was a real benefit. Thank them for the invitation, and it was great. And they're going to get me and Cody in skates, I reckon, and give it a try. So watch out for that. Apparently, it didn't hurt as much as it looked, but we'll see.
Thank you, Councillor Solomon. Councillor Davies?
I'll just, I guess, cover I went on to the information session about the electronet that was held up here, and that was quite interesting because I had a few people contact me from Golnarees saying, "What's this? Why are we hearing about power lines and all this sort of thing?" And I think we've managed to work through that. It is a wider range than it might have initially looked on a small thing. It actually, the range is an area that goes out from Dolores all the way out into the Gloucester Council, past housing metropolitan areas, is all within the range of where they're considering putting lines. So I think, and Chris was there, Brian regaled them with a lot of exciting stories while he was there too. And then I went downstairs afterwards and I joined in a Friends of the Library event where they gave me a teacup and they said, "Do some viola arranging." So I learned that too while I was there at the Civic Centre.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. Any other attendances? Just fly through one of these quickly, so I haven't got anything up. But we had the Broadway spectacle at Trinity College for the Razor Roof, great fundraiser. For the Anglican Church roof, St George's roof project. Well attended, and the talent there from Trinity is absolutely amazing. I was at the Man with the Pram on Father's Day as well, just representing council because of the work we're doing for the men's health side of things with Kim Wright and the great work. That was well attended for one of their first events in Today Nature. The following week was all about the National Drought Forum, where we saw this all kitted out with federal ministers from across Australia and representatives from our farming communities here in South Australia, but certainly throughout the rest of the country as well. It was a day and a half of information sharing. There might be a little bit of feedback I'm trying to work on because Mayor Bill Close, for example, from my council, wasn't actually invited to it, and he only came on the second day after I jumped up and down a little bit with luckily some help from our federal member. I think that was a bit of a miss, in my opinion. So I'm trying to provide some feedback on that. Then we had the official opening of the SES shed in Williston. That was well attended. Not only I actually did 2 visits, one in an official capacity and then 2 taking my family up there because it was a family fun day as well. And that was, again, well attended, great set, and look forward to team in full-fledged. Little fun fact, it's the first brand new facility built for the SES for 30 years. So I think the advocacy work that's been going on behind the scenes, election promises and strategically setting themselves up, SES volunteers and advocates did a great job, and this is something they've been working on since I think 2017. So good on them, congratulations. Our 6-weekly meeting with Mr. Kenton was the following Monday, which was received well, positive. Then I had the Gawler District B12 Year 12 banquet, which we sit in for a home ec test where the students cook for their guests. It was well attended by teachers and also a candidate for White, James Agnes. It was just good to be able to talk to the teachers and share some stories. I was sitting right across the aisle from two tech teachers, so it was all wood talk for us, which absolutely was good. Then we had and today, just quickly perusing, but the small business forum with Mr. Michaels. That was well attended today in this very room. I was about 5 minutes late, but luckily there was about 3 or 4 other people that were running a little bit late too, and it was scrambling for chairs there in the end. I think it was well received from the room, and as all those conversations seem to go, sometimes the value comes from the mingling after, so it was good to see the minister stick around and talk to the business owners that took the time to come out. And we are now at this council meeting, so hopefully that's my quick list there. So that's my list. Anyone else need to add anything? There being none, I'm going to move forward with the confidential reports. So we do have 2 confidential items here. Sorry, 3 confidential items. The first item is 18.1. I'm going to look for a mover to move into confidence. You're happy to move that way? Would you like to just give a quick brief?
I'll just move. Happy to move. Oh, sorry, let me just get up on my screen here. Just going to move some confidential check that on the screen there. Is it? Oh, it's completely. It's excellent. Thank you. So I'm moving to confidence. Under subsection A, information disclosure, which would involve unreasonable disclosure of information concerning the personal affairs of the person either living or dead. And J, information disclosure, which I would divulge information provided on a confidential basis by a minister, or to a minister of the Crown, or another public authority or official, not being an employee of the council or person engaged by the council, and I would, on balance, be contrary to the public interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Solomon. You'll have to second that. Any further discussion? There being none, I'm going to move that we go to confidence. All those in favour? That is carried. Thank you to